Hey guys, welcome back. We're on to our second part, the Metro Division previews now. We already gave you guys our first one the other day for the Atlantic, and now we're going to start with the Metro, and we're going to start off with the Carolina Hurricanes. This is a team, very successful team. I mean, almost every year in and out, they make the playoffs, and they tend to go like at least to the second round. Last year, Final Four. They got some changes this offseason. They wanted to try some new stuff out. Especially with Michael Bunting coming in, kind of a little pest of a player, but this guy, we know, we've seen it, he can get 20 goals, he can be really chippy, and just adds a little bit something different for this team.
Yeah, and the other addition that they made was paying for Dmitry Orlov. It's going to be very interesting to see how Dmitry Orlov play on this team. There are times that he was really good for the Washington Capitals, and there were times where he wasn't very good, especially during the Boston series against the Florida Panthers. I thought he didn't play very well. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Michael Bunting, a pest of a player, fits on that top six. I think he'll do really well, actually, on this team. Rob Bremore is notorious for making a very strong team out of mediocre, medium-sized players. So
yeah, he's definitely one of the best coaches out there for sure. And then as well, finally, bringing back Tony DeAngelo. We got to see this guy a couple years ago with Carolina. He was kind of what we expected he would be, a really good offensive forward with kind of a bit of a lapse in his defensive game. But I think that's why they have him and Orlov here as changes. I mean, Carolina has been really good on defense for a long time. This kind of adds a bit more offensive punch between these two guys to this team. But then, of course, when you're bringing in players have to be going out to make room. And unfortunately for them, they had to get rid of Max Pacioretty and just let him go. It kind of makes sense, though. I mean, this guy really never got much in with Carolina between the injuries that he had. I mean, not really his fault, just bad luck. So that's a little bit of scoring that they do lose, but I guess they're hoping guys like Bunting can kind of get that middle six, second line role covered.
yeah, another thing I'll be really watching for the Carolina Hurricanes this year would be the development of Seth Jarvis. I really like this player.
Yeah.
This player has been really good for the 2 years that he's been on this team, but I want him to take that extra step. And it's also going to be interesting to see a healthy Teravainen and also a healthy Svechnikov on this team again, because they didn't have them in the playoffs, technically.
Yeah, looking at their forwards, I mean, the big problem for this team for a long time has just been depth scoring. We know guys like Aho can get it done, but like Owen said, guys like Seth Jarvis coming in, putting in some production, as well as Jack Drury. He kind of got a bit of a run, especially near the playoffs there where he was coming into the lineup, and he kind of looked decent. I don't know if he's going to be any kind of game-breaking superstar, but if between him and Jarvis, these two young kids can really step up in that top six, this team could be better at scoring.
Yeah, and I also really like the third line that they had with the Marnook there. Marnook was terrific in that second round against the New Jersey Devils, putting up 10 points in that series. Yeah, so the depth scoring is very good on this team. Rob Bremore knows how to use his players really well. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, for me, it's more just they're really good complements to each other. Like the style of play, it just works really well. These guys really sync up really nice. Looking at their defense here, I mean, this is one of, if not the best defensive cores in the league. It's incredible. Led by Jacob Slavin. Year in, year out, this guy is just absolutely phenomenal. He barely ever takes a penalty. This guy is super reliable. One of the best defensive defensemen out there. And then, of course, guys as well that he plays with, like Brett Pesce. I mean, just like really good pair.
Yeah, there were a lot of rumors in the offseason about Brett Pesce getting moved. The good thing is that he's not moved yet.
Yeah.
If they move Brett Pesce, it would be a big problem, I think, with this blue line because they really need a player like that on the back end who is very poised with the puck, who's very patient, who's a good defender. And another one that I really like, Brady Shea. Brady Shea is a good defenseman.
Really underrated player.
Very underrated player. As you alluded to, they got Dmitry Orlov. This one's a little bit interesting. I want to see. I feel like Dmitry Orlov sometimes defensively he's not very good, but I want to see how he plays under Rob Bremore's system.
Yeah, my guess what they're going to do with these pairs right away is I'm guessing they're going to try to put Orlov with someone who's more stable, someone like Brady Shea or a Pesce, and then they'll probably put Slavin back with DeAngelo kind of like they used to for a bit. Then you kind of got one offensive guy and one stay-at-home guy who can bail the other guy out if he's pinching up or something like that.
One more guy I want to ask you about, Brent Burns. What do you think his production is going to be for this season?
It's going to be interesting with Tony DeAngelo back. I don't really know how this works with both of them in the same lineup, mainly because they're both really offensive defensemen. Burns is obviously a little better defensively than DeAngelo, actually quite a bit better. But the power play, I don't really know at this age if it's going to be Brett Burns still or if it's going to be DeAngelo.
I could see it being split because Brent Burns really had a good year last year, but
He did.
But the thing is, he is getting up there in age, and DeAngelo's still young-ish. He's in his prime, in my opinion, and he actually is a pretty good power play specialist, actually.
That's why you get him on your team. That's really what he adds. Obviously, he has some locker room issues.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good that you have a guy like Rob Brendamore as the coach of this team, really keep these guys in check the best they can. And then finally, looking at goaltending, this team had one of the most strange goalie situations last year. They ended up running 3 different goalies throughout the year. I really look forward to this year. I think this is the year that their third goalie from last year, Pyotr Kochetkov, really takes off and starts taking more games away from Ranta and from Freddie Anderson.
Yeah, I think it's time. This Russian goalie is really good, actually, when he did step in and play. And I think they need the young goalie coming up in the system that can take over the net, because I feel like with the age that Freddie Anderson is, don't get me wrong, Freddie Anderson has been terrific for many, many years in this league. He had a good history, but I think his time is coming to the end here. He should lower the amount of workload this upcoming season, especially with his injuries. And Ranta has never been a starting goaltender in my mind. So it's a good, clear pathway for this young goaltender to take this spot.
Yeah, and I think Carolina knows it too. With they signing the new contracts for Freddie and for Ranta for only like 1 year, I'm pretty sure they're convinced that this guy is going to be the future. And what they're doing with their team, having guys like Seth Jarvis, who's pretty young, Aho's still very young, and then guys like Drury, and then obviously they got guys like Kokniemi later down in the lineup. But I mean, they're trying to get a younger core. They're trying to consistently be competitive without getting to be one of those teams like, say, a Pittsburgh or a Washington that just ages out of being a serious contender potentially. So I kind of like what they're doing with that overall.
And the next team that we'll be doing is the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, this team is a very, very interesting team because today they had a big news. Babcock is no longer the coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, does this change anything? Well, I don't know. I think the younger players will be a lot happier playing on this team now, especially guys like Adam Fantilli that they just got in a new number 1 center on this team. They made a huge splash and traded for Ivan Provorov this summer, which is a very, very good ad. Ivan Provorov is a top 2 defenseman in this league, in my opinion. Very good two-way defenseman. And they also signed Damon Severson, although I think the contract was a little high. Severson would be a serviceable top 4 in their defense core, and it should help this team a lot.
Yeah, we've seen Provorov before on other teams like Philadelphia. This guy logs a lot of minutes. He's a really, really physical player, really good shot blocker. He has a lot more than just an offensive punch, but he does have that a little bit too. Kind of a compliment for someone maybe like Zach Werenski. I really do like these 2 ads. It was a little surprising to me that they went out and added Damon Severson and Ivan Provorov, because it feels like they're almost going like all in with those types of player ads, especially with the amount that they ended up paying Severson. But I will say this team does look a lot more competitive. I don't know if they're going to necessarily be like making a run to the Stanley Cup by any means, but this team should be a lot better off than they were last year with these ads.
No, definitely. What do you think about Adam Fantilli, and what do you think his expectation should be this upcoming season?
Hi. This is a player. This is such a good year for rookies in the whole league. I'm going to be completely honest with you. But a guy like Adam Fantilli, if you're a Blue Jackets fan, you should be ecstatic. This guy is truly going to be in the conversation for Rookie of the Year. Absolutely fantastic talent. This is something that Columbus has needed for a long time. It has a decent roster, but they do not have any centers. Like, their center depth is pretty rough. And, you know, when you have guys like Boone Jenner as your number 1 center, that's not sustainable for like playoff success. But Adam Fantilli, on the other hand, you get a proven guy who is played in a lot of big moments, whether it's playing for Team Canada, playing for Michigan. This guy is proven at every level, and he is just going to, like, right out of the gate, be a good player for this team. Wouldn't be surprised if he got like 65 points as a rookie.
Yeah, another player I'm really curious about, actually 2 of them. First of all, it would be Kent Johnson. I want to see him take another step. He's a very exciting young player on this roster. And the other player is Marchenko. He had 20 goals last year on this team.
Yeah, let's look at this. Let's look at this offense for a sec. Yeah. This is a very young offensive core. I mean, I really like it overall. You got guys like, obviously you got Johnny Hockey signed here for big money. And you know what? He was actually pretty decent for a team that didn't do very much last year. And then Patrick Laine, you got a guy who's a proven shooter. But like Cohen said, you got the young kids coming up. You got like a good little mix of veterans and younger players in that top 6. Marchenko was a really good goal scorer last year. I mean, he can't really pass much, but he's a very good finisher. And if you need a guy like as the 5th guy on a power play to kind of stand there and take that shot from the slot, like, he's really good for that as well. And then guys like Kent Johnson. I mean, we watched Kent Johnson start off a little slow, but as the year progressed, we saw this guy making big gains. And I mean, there's a reason he was a top 5 overall draft pick the year he was drafted, because this guy has a ton of talent, and we've seen it in like the World Juniors, we've seen it in college. I think this guy's going to continue to develop this year and take big steps.
Another player I really want to see take a next step would be Cole Sillinger. You know, he came in as an 18-year-old in this league. He had actually a pretty okay rookie season.
Yeah.
But the second year, he just vanished. Like, absolutely didn't, just vanished. So I want to see him come back and actually see what he can do in this upcoming season.
That was so strange. He was the youngest player in the NHL in his rookie year, and he looked very comfortable, and he did really well given his age. I think he had like 25, 30 points at that age, which is incredible. And then for some reason, he had trouble staying with the team last year. He kind of got sent down for a little bit to the AHL. So look for him to get back in the lineup, although it does look like this forward group is going to be quite crowded because there is a lot of talent there. Looking at the defense, this is like kind of what we said with the new additions. This got really spicy really quick. I think this defensive core on paper is actually pretty solid and really competitive. I mean, you're going to get Zach Werenski back. He's been gone for a while because of injury. He barely played last year. And then you got guys like Ivan Provorov, who are absolutely unreal two-way defensemen that you can use in every situation. Power play, penalty kill, play 27 minutes a night, which is going to be really huge, especially for a guy like Werenski, who has tendencies to get hurt. So that is good coverage.
Yeah, I really like, and Damon Severson, I know Scott here is not the biggest fan of this player, but he is serviceable on this team. Other defensemen to round out this defense core is they have Andrew Peeke. Andrew Peeke is really, really good. We've seen him shutting down top forwards. He's a really good shutdown defenseman. And they also have Adam Boqvist. We'll see how he plays. Adam Boqvist is a young player. He's still in his development stage. We'll see if he can provide more offense. But yeah, like Scott alluded to, this is a very good defense core, especially with Zach Werenski back for a full season, hopefully, because he was technically not playing at all last season. It's essentially an addition by not having.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a big up. Like, I mean, it's like they're getting 3 new defensemen essentially, with Werenski coming back and then these 2 other guys. And like, this is a really good core, like complementary of each other. They got some offensive guys like Boqvist who can bring some offense. He's kind of struggled a little bit in his development, but we always got to remember defensemen take time. They're not just going to walk in there at 21 years old, 20 years old and be super successful unless their name's like Cale Makar. It doesn't happen every day, and we're just going to have to give them a little more time.
One more player I want to add. If Juracek makes this team, it'll be pretty insane.
I was literally just going to say that. You just beat me to that. That's going to be a guy I'm watching for. Last year in the AHL, David Juracek, one of the best prospects for Columbus, absolutely dominated. Like, his numbers in the AHL were unheard of for a rookie defenseman. And look for him at some point in the year, whether through injury or for call-up because of performance, to get that spot on the 3rd pair for Columbus. I do think he will by halfway through this year. He is too talented. He adds too much, both offensively, defensively. He's a good puck mover, very physical player, big body. I think that would be a perfect 6th defenseman for this team.
And now we move on to the goalie section, and they have Elvis Merzlikins and being their starting goaltender in this. Elvis Merzlikins is an okay goaltender in my opinion, just not the best. We'll see how he does this year. For me, it's streaky. This is a guy we've seen at a very, very high level in the past, like 3 years ago. And we've also seen pretty poor play over like a 3.2 goals against, and like we're talking barely over 9 or under 9 save percentage. So that's pretty inconsistent, but Tarasov as a backup is going to be interesting. This guy has been talked up a lot in the last 2 years, and I'm interested to see if he takes another step and if he has what it takes to actually take the number 1 role, or if these 2 goalies are just going to be alternating 40 games apiece. Yeah, it won't be a bad idea if they're battling out for that number 1 spot actually. You want good
drives competition.
Yeah, drives competition. And on top of that, I feel like with this new defense core, these goalies should be playing a lot better in front of this defense core this year.
Oh yeah, I fully expect some of these numbers to come up, especially or go down, I guess, for goals against. I don't think these guys are going to be over 3 this year, especially Merzlikins. He has no excuse now. He's got a lot of good players in front of him, so it should be quite interesting to see if they can actually, as a whole team, take it to the next level. Alrighty, next up we have the New Jersey Devils. In my mind, one of the most exciting teams to watch play right now. This is a very, very up-and-coming, good young team with a lot of fast players. This team made some pretty big changes, I'd say, in the offseason. The biggest one's got to be their addition. They brought in Tyler Toffoli to round out that top 6, and wow, does it look stacked. I mean, it's debatably top 3 in the entire NHL right now. I mean, when you got guys like Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier down the center, and now you got guys like Toffoli coming in, who is a proven scorer. This guy's been to Cup finals. He's won Stanley Cups with LA in the past. He brings a lot of veteran experience while being able to score 30 goals. What an ad.
Yeah, those signings with Timo Myers and signing Jesper Bratt, like to me, it was a surprise that they were able to get both of them in the same team. And those I think, were really good signings actually, because it rounds up the top 6 really well.
It does. I mean, it helps that they had guys like Jack Hughes take 8x8 contract, which is a bargain. It's allowing them to afford guys like this, and it's just unreal. Unfortunately, to get players like Toffoli and to have that room, they had to make some changes. They had to trade out Igor Sharangovich, who had been there for the last few years. Not a massive loss by any means. I mean, Sharangovich would not really get the same ice time lately, and he wasn't really contributing what we thought he would after his rookie year. Guys like Boquist are gone. A lot of depth players. Miles Wood left as well. So it should be a little interesting to see this team without some of these guys. But it does give a lot of opportunities for newcomers from the AHL. Potentially even guys like Alexander Holtz finally gets an opportunity inside the top 9 to be successful.
Yeah, that's actually the player I'll be watching very, very closely this upcoming season. Alexander Holtz is a first round, 7th overall pick player, I believe. And he's been drafted as a shooter on this team. He will probably start on the 3rd line there with Eric Holla. Is it Eric Holla?
Yeah, and Palat probably.
Yeah, with Eric Holla and Palat. So that's actually a pretty good 3rd line if you think about it. You have a young guy there, and then you have 2 experienced veterans there. That'll be a nice, solid 3rd line if it blossoms.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. This is kind of Holtz's last chance in my mind. He should have probably made the team last year. If he can't do it this year, I think he's either going to get traded or might have to go back to the AHL again. But yeah, let's look at some of this offense on this team overall right now, because like this is where like definitely the bread and butter of this team. This is a very fast team. Like these guys are all insane skaters, obviously led by Jack Hughes, one of the best skaters in the entire league. Absolutely broke out last year. Almost had 100 points. If he didn't get hurt, he would have. I mean, the guy had 99 points in like 80 games. He definitely was going to get there in my mind. And then obviously some of these other guys around him are just like incredible players too. I mean, when you got guys like Jesper Bratt who can fly, and then guys like Timo Meyer, really big body, physical player, it just has a really good complement for each other.
Yeah, I mean, it completes the top 6. All 6 players on that top 6 are very, very good and all complete now. Not one weakness. Especially that line with Jack Hughes, with Jesper Bratt, and now Toffoli. Toffoli is now the trigger man on that line. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, everyone knows that Jack Hughes can shoot the puck as well. That he can score goals. He's a sniper, but at the same time, they're both very. Him and Jesper Bratt are very, very quick. I expect Jack Hughes to take another step this year to go over the 100-point marker.
Yeah, I really do like the makeup. I mean, especially like having guys like Holla and Platt down the line. You got like a true, really gritty 3rd line with a lot of effort and a lot of hard work kind of thing. Guys that aren't just like skill players. It's really nice compliment. And then 4th line, standard. I mean, the kind of the gritty players who play the 7-8 minutes a game. I mean, last year, Bastian, I mean, he added some really good physical play for this team. So honestly, not too bad overall.
So now we look at the defense. They lost a couple back there. They lost Severson, and they also lost Ryan Graves to the Pittsburgh Penguins. A lot of opportunities now for the younger players like Luke Hughes to take on the role full time. It opens a slot for Simon Nemec to hopefully make the roster now. But this defense core has already been good with Jogan Siegenthaler, Dougie Hamilton, and John Marino. So we'll see how they do.
Yeah, last year I was very impressed. I think one of the best moves this team made was going out and getting John Marino. He was such a good fit inside that top 4. Killing almost any penalties that they had. I mean, this guy was such a hard worker, such a good player with his stick defensively. And then obviously Siegenthaler and Hamilton just have such good chemistry. It's going to be interesting to see now. Luke Hughes is going to get a serious opportunity to play. We saw in the playoffs how he could play, and it was really unreal for such a young player, especially for a defenseman. That's pretty unheard of. Not too many defensemen at that age can play that confidently. And I think he's going to take a big step this year and probably round out that top 4, replacing Ryan Graves. I'm interested to see if Simon Nemec actually gets a chance for a call up into this top 6. He had a pretty solid year in the AHL last year, but I don't know if they want to give him another year. Could be like a David Juracek situation where he gets called up in case of injury to fill in. It's going to be interesting to see without Ryan Graves. I thought he was pretty decent for the most part. Obviously, they couldn't afford paying him $4.5 million. But I think this team is going to be okay overall. Like Cohen said, it just gives other opportunities for other high-end prospects to come up and take some of that time.
Yeah, now let's look at their goaltender. They have Vanacek and they have Akira Schmid. How do you think they're going to do?
Oh man, last year I thought Vanacek in the regular season was absolutely phenomenal. To come into a new team like that and play that well was just unreal. The guy won so many games for the Devils last year. It's unreal. And then Akira Schmid. I mean, this guy showed us his true potential. This is a guy who has really high upside. We saw when he outdueled Igor Shesterkin and won that series for the Devils in Game 7. Just phenomenal play. The guy had like 2 shutouts in that series. Just really good stuff for a young player. I expect these goalies to kind of be more of split this year. I still think Vanacek will play more games. I'd say probably we're looking at about a 50 to 32 split.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty split for these two goaltenders, but I'm not really sold on either of them. I don't think either of them are that great. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out for the goaltender crease this season for the New Jersey Devils. I know their defense is really good, but I'm not sold on either of their goalies.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about them going out to get Hellebuck this offseason. Doesn't sound, as of yet at least, that it's going to happen. So they're just going to have to roll with these two guys, and hopefully they have enough of a team around them to take them to the next level.
And the next team that we have is the New York Islanders. Now the New York Islanders actually added nothing in the offseason, so this one's really easy to do. Now in terms of the offense core, what do I feel about it? I feel like it's pretty stagnant. they would get, it's pretty much the same as last year. They would get Bo Horvat for the whole season. We'll see how that plays out. And they're going to get Matthew Barzal coming back from an injury and should be able to play most of the season.
Yeah, this is kind of a Lou Lamoriello special. He doesn't like to go out and do too much in the offseason. And once again, kind of same thing. Compared to these other teams that made quite a few moves and have a bunch of different key adds and subtractions, this team really didn't do much different. I don't know really with this offense. They obviously addressed it kind of last year at the trade deadline when they made the biggest splash of all, going out and getting Bo Horvat, which, as much as I thought it's not going to drastically change things for the team, it's at least taking a step to try to be more offensively aggressive. And I did like that. That was good. I'm curious to see how he does on this team now with a full year. He's kind of got some experience there. Likely going to be running Barzal and then him as the two centers, which is a pretty good one too, actually, if you think about it. And then the wingers is where this team really seems to struggle offensively.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't like the offensive core of this team at all. I only like the top 2 centers are pretty good, but I mean, you got Anders Lee, who's a year older now. I mean, he's a pretty old player now. They don't have Zach Brazen, which is good, but they could still have Kyle Palmieri on this team, who's a very old player. Oliver Wahlstrom is going to be one of those players, younger players that need to take a step this year.
Absolutely. That's one of the big players on this Islanders team that really needs to show his potential and actually become like a 25, 30 goal scorer. He had a lot of hype as a child. Like, this guy was a child prodigy, even from the age of like 12. Oliver Wahlstrom was known to be like this next big thing, and it kind of never materialized the way they had hoped for. But this is like a really good opportunity for him. He's got to try to become a 30 goal scorer for this team, or else they're really going to struggle scoring goals. One guy who didn't struggle scoring goals on this team though, however, and I got to give him a shout out, is Brock Nilsson. Last year played absolutely unreal. Like, the season he had, over 30 goals, over 60 points, like just a really solid player last year. And I mean, if he can replicate that, this team might have a chance to actually do some damage.
Yeah, Brock Nelson is, to me, is a very good player playing in the center role. So if he plays the center role,
I don't think he will now with Horvat though.
Yeah,
not as likely. Probably play winger.
Yeah, but yeah.
But yeah, we got to look at what the real strengths of this team are here, and let's go to the defense. This defense for a long time has been unreal. When you look at the number 1 pairing of Ryan Pollock and Pelech, it's just absolutely unreal. These guys are such a good shutdown pair. One of the best, if not the best in the league. Year in, year out, you know what you can rely on. These guys can eat up minutes. And then looking down, I mean, you got guys like Noah Dobson, who is, honestly, he's got so much potential. He's had some pretty good offensive years the last 2 years, but I look for him to take an even bigger step this year. I think if he can get up to becoming like a 60-point defenseman, this team can really start to get things done, especially on the power play a little bit more.
Yeah, and another guy I really like is Scott Mayfield there. They signed him and they retained him, and I really like Scott Mayfield. I always liked him because he's a good to me, a good physical defenseman back there. Usually a cheaper guy. He's not really cheap anymore, but he's a good defenseman. One guy I really will be watching this year will be Noah Dobson. I mean, this guy needs to take a step offensively, and he needs to also take a step defensively. I think that his defensive game needs work. It's not there, in my opinion. He makes a lot of weird mistakes on this team, and he needs to fix that.
Yeah, so like on this team, he's easily the most offensively talented player for a defenseman. But yes, I will agree with Hohen. He needs to make a couple better decision-making changes in his game, especially in his own zone. I think it's really good actually when he was playing with Romanov, another guy who on this defense has got so much potential. Like that pair being so young, both of them being under 25 years old, they have like the sky is the limit. They could be a really dominant pair, offensive defenseman and then defensive defenseman. They really complement each other. Dobson's way less physical, but Romanov is not afraid to hit anything that moves. And I think Islanders fans should be excited for that because unlike the offense that's kind of aging, this young defensive core has a lot of promise.
Yeah, I love how much hits Romanov hits throughout the season. He throws his body around, love it. Blocks, goes in lanes, block shots.
Oh, you love having a guy like that.
Exactly, and he's young too. But now let's look at a goaltender. They have arguably the best goaltender in the league, in Ilya Sorokin.
Straight up.
Yeah, straight up. There's nothing else I need to say.
This guy, we got to talk about this because for the longest time, it was always Vasi. Everyone was talking about Vasi. Then after that, it was Shesterkin. But now Ilya Sorokin is getting in so many conversations as either top 3 or the best goaltender in the league. We saw it a lot last year. Some of the highlight reel saves this guy's make is just unreal. Like he's just so talented. I mean, he won this team so many games they had no business being in. And I mean, to have a guy that young there for like a long time now. I mean, like this guy's going to be with this team probably his whole career. Absolutely exciting if you're a fan of tight games because this guy really steps it up when it matters most.
Yeah, even their backup goaltender is not bad. Varlamov.
Oh, these guys have the best 1-2 in hockey.
Yeah.
Like the Islanders have the best 1-2 goaltending situation. Either of these guys you feel pretty confident with. Obviously, Sorokin's in a league of his own, but Varley is still kicking and he's still playing some pretty good hockey.
Yeah, unlike Tampa Bay Lightning, they don't have a good backup goaltender. At least this team has 2 really good goaltenders.
It is
Right?
It is a blessing, honestly. Yeah. Like, I mean, Islanders fans, the whole defensive core and then goaltending, it just really makes up for the lack of offense because these guys get it done. Next up, the New York Rangers. This team is so strange. I mean, they made some pretty big changes at the deadline last year. They went all in. They went balls to the wall, added Taro, added Patrick Kane. Unfortunately, these guys are now departures. They're gone out again, along with backup goaltender Yaroslav Halak. But they did get some guys in there to replace. A couple I kind of liked too that I thought were pretty good fits. They added Blake Wheeler. I think this is a good add because, I mean, you don't have to keep him for a long time. He's a little older, but he brings a lot of veteran leadership. This guy used to be a captain. He's probably able to play in the top 6, top 9 if you want to play him lower, but I think eventually he'll probably play either the first or second line. He's got too much talent, really good passer. I just really like what they did there.
Oh, hands down. Blake Wheeler is a perfect fit on this team, actually. I feel like the problem with New York Rangers last year in that playoff run, they had too many cooks in the kitchen.
They did.
They didn't know who to... Like, Zibanejad was like the most muted I've ever seen him. He should be shooting the puck in that playoff run. He was barely shooting that puck. I'm used to seeing him being the trigger man, but he wasn't the trigger man. So it was weird for me to see. So it's good that Zibanejad is the guy now that should be shooting all those pucks. Their forward group is very, very good. I think it's an upgrade without those 2 guys, without Tarasenko and Patrick Kane. They didn't need those guys on this team. Adding a veteran presence in Blake Wheeler is a perfect fit. He doesn't need to. He's a guy that can go in the second line, third line. But now it puts up Capo Caco in the top 6, which is not a thing preferred. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, what I noticed last year when they went out and added all those guys, it was kind of hard because like Panarin and Kane kind of did similar things. They both like to be playmakers. They both like to hold the puck. And Zibanejad loves to shoot, and Taro loves to shoot. And for some reason, what they were doing is pretty much playing these guys together, and they had like almost no chemistry the way they did it. Nope. It just wasn't a good fit, and you could kind of see it looked uncomfortable. Power play wasn't really clicking either, and it kind of affected them, especially when they went so dry offensively against the Devils in that playoff series. But one thing I really liked, other than the ad where they added Blake Wheeler for cheap, is they added Jonathan Quick. Now, obviously, Jonathan Quick is getting up there in age. He's not a spring chicken anymore. But compared to how Halak played as the backup goalie, it's a big difference. Halak was pretty horrible for the Rangers last year. I think Rangers fans all know that. I think it took this guy like 9 games to win a game when he started. It was pretty much an auto loss for a while when it wasn't Shesterkin in net. But I think it really helps having Jonathan Quick there. He's not going to play a lot of games. He might only play 20, and then Shesterkin will play like 62. But it gives him that little guy who can spell when he's not up to it, or if he just like for some reason needs a rest.
Yeah, now let's take a further look at their offensive core. They have number one center would be Zibanejad, and number two center they got Vincent Trocheck, which is a really good center, second line center.
Yeah,
and the third line center that they have is Filipino, who I really like, and I see him having some potential, being a very good hockey player. And they just this offseason they added their fourth line center in Nick Bonino, so I feel like their center core is actually not bad.
No, it's actually really solid, especially on paper. I mean, like, Trocheck, I thought could have been a little bit better at times, but he actually finished the season with some pretty good numbers overall. Obviously, you're getting a really great effort from Zibanejad. If anything, he might be the hardest working offensive player on this team. This guy's always given it 110%. One thing I look for this year offensively is I want to see if Capo Caco and Alexis Lafreniere can step it up to another level. They kind of actually were slightly better last year, which was good, but it was such a small difference of improvement that I was a little worried. I think these guys really got to take a step this year, and if they don't, I just think it's not the right fit, and they might have to look for a new location to play.
Yeah, I agree. They have to. They have to be the X factors. Do I think they're gonna do it? I don't think so. I think they reached the cap. I really don't think they're that good of hockey players. But I think if they can, if Lafreniere can chip in 50 points on this team, that'd be great.
I will say, in Lafreniere's defense, even though his numbers don't look great, he was actually really good 5-on-5 for the most part. The guy just doesn't really get any power play points because he doesn't get the opportunity. But 5-on-5, I thought he played a lot better last year. Capo Caco, same thing. He played a little bit better. This guy should be a 30-goal scorer. I don't know why he's having so much trouble after all these years. I mean, great prospect and, second overall player. Clearly, it looks like the Devils with Jack Hughes got a little bit better there. But Kako should still be able to get things going. He had moments. Like, I watched him in a couple games, and I'm like, wow, this is the guy that they drafted. This guy looks really good. Same with Lafreniere. He had moments where he's just, like, taking it off the boards, like, huge deke score, backhand goal. Some crazy things. So these guys just got to be more consistent game in, game out.
Yeah, they added a new coach this year, Peter Laviolette. We'll see if he can turn these kids around. If he can't, it's a big problem.
Yeah. Looking at that defense, though, speaking of big problem, this is not really the biggest problem. No. This defensive core is actually pretty solid, obviously led by Adam Fox. This guy, if he's not the best in the league, and Cale Makar might be still, probably is, he's probably second. This guy is absolutely unreal. He's already won a Norris. He's so young still and has room to even grow and get better. Really good two-way defenseman. You can rely on him. He'll block shots for you. Not so physical, but he doesn't need to be because he's just so good with positioning and being in the right area at the right time.
Yeah, and I love Jacob Trouba. Trouba is a fantastic shutdown defenseman. In my opinion, one of the best in the league, actually. He's a very physical guy. He actually skates pretty well for his size, gets into position pretty well, blocks shots, hits hard. Love this guy. Keandre Miller, a younger player who's a great two-way defenseman. I think he's really good. Ryan Lindgren, also a very physical player up there. Have very good chemistry with Adam Fox there. And then you don't forget Braden Schneider. I think he's a good young upcoming defender.
That's the guy I'm watching for this year actually the most. Last year, the guy I was watching for was Keandre Miller, and honestly, he impressed me. I thought he had a pretty good year. This year, I'm looking for Braden Schneider. Good young player. I think this guy has the ability to be a really hard-hitting, consistent guy who might be a fourth defenseman, might be a fifth defenseman. We don't really know. With this team, probably be a fifth defenseman because, the top four of Fox, Trouba, Lindgren, and Keandre are pretty much set in stone, I think. But, that just really shows the depth.
Oh, yeah. It's really, really deep team, actually.
I like what they have there, too, because you got some guys like Fox who can put up like a point per game, guys like Trouba and Lindgren who will hit and block anything. And now if they can get Keandre up there for a secondary scoring option on the back end, this team's really laughing.
So now we'll talk about the goaltenders for this team, and they got the number one best goaltender in my mind, and it's Igor Shesterkin. This guy is unbelievable. He kind of had a little bit of a down year last year, to be honest with you. I didn't think he had a great year. But he had a good year, but not a fantastic year. I absolutely see this guy being able to bounce back this season.
Yeah, it's a close debate right now, I think, between Shesterkin and Sorokin, but Shesterkin is just consistently so good. Even like Hohen said, he had a down year last year, and his down year was still better than most goalies' best year. Like, it's kind of incredible when you play like slightly worse than the year before, but you're still so much better than the majority of goaltenders. And that's basically what he did. The New York Rangers didn't lose that series to the Devils because Igor Shesterkin wasn't great. He was phenomenal. His numbers, if you go look at it, this guy was outstanding. They lost because they couldn't score goals. Simply put. I mean, the problem is never in net with this team. And now that they have a capable backup like Jonathan Quick, I really think that this team is pretty set in net overall.
And the next team that we have is the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, this team is second year under John Tortorella. The main adds that they had this offseason were Sean Walker. Hathaway, I think, is a good addition to this team. I really like Hathaway when he was on the Boston Bruins and the Washington Capitals. He was a very physical fourth-line player. We'll see. And I think he just fits this Philadelphia Flyers perfectly.
Dude, he's meant to be a Philadelphia Flyer. Like, as a Washington fan,
Yep.
When he was there, he's exactly what the Flyers are all about. He's a really good fit for that team. I think for me, the additions they made on this team, and this is no offense to Philadelphia fans, because honestly, you guys got one of my future favorite players ever in Matvei Mishkov in the draft. So, I mean, I'm probably going to be cheering for the Flyers a little bit in the next couple of years. But it does feel like they went out and got a lot of rentals that are not going to be there long term, because this team is admitted it, they are rebuilding. You kind of see that with the departures this team had. I mean, they kind of let a lot of people go. Big name players for this team. Provorov is out of town, like we talked about. He is now with the Columbus Blue Jackets. They sent off Kevin Hayes, one of the best players they had offensively last year, to St. Louis. I mean, this team is clearly going full rebuild.
Yeah. Let's take a closer look at their offense, though. What do you? This year they should get Sean Couturier back full-time.
That is exciting. I mean, this is a player who was one of the best two-way centers in the game. It feels like it's almost like we forget about it because he seems like he's been injured for a long, long time. It's been a long time since we've seen this guy play hockey. I really like this player a lot. I'm really hoping he comes back strong and looks like his old self.
Yeah, I really hope so. He's one of my favorite, like personal favorite players. So he's not like the best player, but I really like his two-way game a lot. He's
Very
a
reliable.
big-sized centerman who takes up a lot of minutes. They really missed him last year for sure. I think the Philadelphia team would have been very, very different last year if they had Sean Couturier playing full time last season. But obviously injury hits. It's just how the game goes.
Yeah, but we got to look at some of these young kids on offense now. I mean, Couturier, obviously, we know roughly what we're going to get if he comes back to be the same player. He was a really solid player. Hopefully he can mentor these young kids because this team has got a lot younger in the last 2-3 years. Guys like Owen Tippett, who kind of came on near the end of last year. I really thought that he was going to really not do that, but he really surprised me. He was very active, getting tons of shots on net, getting a decent amount of points considering the team wasn't very good last year. And then they had some other guys that just absolutely stood out to me too. So I just can't wait to see this team and see if they actually are able to take steps, even though they might not be the best this year.
Yeah, I mean, they got some good players still there. Scott Laughton is pretty good. TK is very good. Travis Konechny. But yeah, we'll see how this team does. But let's move on to defense.
Yeah, looking at this defense, I mean, this is going to be a different defense. Without Provorov there to take up a lot of minutes, and as well as Travis Sanheim is gone. That's a big loss. Actually, you could argue that's their whole top pair from last year.
What Scott is saying is that their blue line's very, very, very
It's
thin.
thin.
It's extremely thin. They admitted to a rebuild. They're not going to win many hockey games this season. And this is the type of defense. This defense won't get you anywhere. It's very, very thin. Now,
I gotta before we move on, I gotta give some credit though. One thing I will, if I was a Philadelphia fan, look forward to is Cam York. This is a former first-round pick. He actually showed some really good signs last year, and I think this is kind of good that they got rid of some of these guys like Provorov and like Sanheim, because this is going to give Cam York a ton of time. He's going to be playing like 24, 25 minutes a night. Really good developmental time for this guy. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, this team is playing for like 2025, 2026 when Mishkov gets there. They're trying to set up a base. They're trying to have some good young players. And then when this happens, this team is going to be explosive and amazing.
Yeah. Now let's move on to goaltender. Now they got Carter Hart. There was a lot of rumors that they were going to move Carter Hart this offseason. They did not do that. It's going to be very interesting to see how he plays this season.
Yeah, it seemed like they were trying to push him out the door. There's been so many trade rumors for this kid. I feel bad a little bit because nothing happened, and he kept getting told. Like I heard Montreal mentioned a ton with his name there. Some good teams too, like the Oilers. Like I mean, there's a bunch of teams like were inquiring about him, but nothing seemed to get done. Apparently, Philadelphia just wanted too much for him, which makes sense. I mean, he's a young goalie with really high potential. We saw last year how good out of the gate he was. One of the best goalies in like the first 20 games of the year last year.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for this player because I'm sure he doesn't want to waste his prime playing, especially as young years playing on this team that's absolutely not going anywhere.
It's rebuilding, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, next up is a team that made an absolute ton of changes. I guess that kind of happens when your GM is Kyle Dubas, who loves to go out there and make moves. The Pittsburgh Penguins, they really just went all out. They got Erik Karlsson, by far the biggest move they made this offseason. I mean, we just watched this guy get 100 points last year on a bad team like San Jose. This is really an all-in move.
Yeah, I mean, this team, with Kyle Dubas, he added a lot of players. I really like the add of Riley Smith, who complements that top six really well. It just, these moves really show that Kyle Dubas is committed on trying to give this old core one last hurrah.
Yeah, and adding Ryan Graves, I mean, he played really good for New Jersey last year. Really good fit inside that top four. Adding Karlsson and Graves both, this defensive core is so much different, and that was a very big problem that Pittsburgh Penguins had last year. They weren't able to keep the puck out of the net, so I look for this to really help out this team. They lost a couple defensemen here in Jeff Petrie and Dumoulin. Not crazy bad losses. Dumoulin was there for a long time, though, so that is kind of unfortunate. But they also lost some forwards in Granlund, who really never worked out there, so I don't think that's going to be a big deal, and Zucker. But I think, like Hohen said, Riley Smith's probably a better version of Zucker at this point.
Yeah, honestly, when I look at the losses of this team, I think none of these players were good anyways that left the team. They were not good on this team. They were actually holding this team back, like Jason Sucre. Jason Sucre has been on this team for a long time. He really didn't add anything to this team. Adding an experienced player like a Riley Smith, who just won a cup, and he has been proven that he can put the puck in the back of the net. He is such an upgrade over those players. Dumoulin is the only player where I look at where he's a valuable player that they lost, but they added Ryan Graves, who in my mind it's an upgrade over him. So younger and just better. So this team is going all in. They also added Noah Acciari, who is a solid fourth line player who I really like, and obviously the GM really like. Took him from Toronto.
Yeah.
And they also added a new third line center in Lars Eller. So this guy, I think the sky's the limit for this team to try to really make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's going to be interesting to see if they actually live up to the hype of, on paper, this roster looking so good. But obviously, we've seen in the past with other teams, too much change can be a bad thing. But let's take a look at this offense quickly. I mean, it's kind of the same type of offense for the most part we've seen, led by obviously Crosby and Malkin. Obviously, Jake Gunsel's still there. I mean, this is a core that we've all become pretty accustomed to for like the big name players. They've been there for so long. You kind of know what you're going to get. These guys don't age. I mean, last year we saw Crosby and Malkin both over a point per game in their like mid to late 30s. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, a guy I'll be really watching is Brian Russ. I really like this player with the chemistry that he has with Evgeny Malkin. I really want him to bring that glory day back and actually have put up like 30 goals again. I think that would be pivotal for this team to move.
And with a guy like Riley Smith, like Owen said earlier, this is a guy who's consistently 50 points plus. Playing with Malkin and probably Rust on that second line, that's a pretty damn good second line.
Yeah, and one of the key things that I hope this team doesn't get hit with is the injury bug, because this team, if Crosby goes down for a significant amount of time, that's going to be a problem with this team.
Yeah, other than Crosby and Malkin in center position, I mean, I don't know if Lars Eller can really step into that type of a role. So that would be kind of interesting, but he brings that good two-way play that is needed for a third line shutdown type player. Looking at this defense, like we said earlier, like absolutely, like it's completely revamped in a lot of ways. I mean, adding Ryan Graves, you get a lot younger. You get a guy who's very good at shot blocker. Obviously, you still got Chris Letang there. He's old, but he's still so reliable. Erik Karlsson is just such a boost offensively. Obviously, defensively, he has his lapses. But if you put him with a guy like, say, Ryan Graves, I mean, you kind of have a guy like we talked about with some of these other teams who can stay at home, kind of cover up some of the mistakes, and he can feel free to just roam and be like a fourth forward.
Yeah, I mean, the projected top four defenseman right now looks pretty solid on paper. They got Peterson playing with Erik Karlsson.
Marcus Pettersson is
right?
a very, very good defensive defenseman. He does not get enough love. This guy is absolutely an unreal player.
Yeah, so it would be interesting to see how that pairing works out. And then Chris Letang is projected to play with Ryan Graves. So that, to me, that's a good pair. Now, the problem, again, with this defense core is because of the age, because of this age of this core, is Chris Letang going to play most of these games? Like, quite honestly, that's a good question mark.
Probably not. I mean, most likely, you're going to have to assume that Chris Letang plays about 60 games, 55, 60 games.
If lucky.
He doesn't play the full season lately. Unfortunate luck with injury bug. But I'm more worried, less than that. I'm more worried about that third defensive pair. I think they could get exposed a little bit. With Ruhwedel and Joseph, I'm a little concerned with that pair. I'm hoping for their sake they don't have to play them a lot. Joseph did show some flashes where he looked okay, but he is still a very young defenseman, and it might not be the best.
Yeah, I just feel like, personally, the Pittsburgh Penguins, they just don't have the depth chart right now. Like, if these
players
injuries,
get hurt,
if these players get hurt, they're screwed.
Because they have so much money spent on the high-end players, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, when you're paying Carlson, you're paying
And they have no
Crosby.
young guys in the system coming up.
Yeah, this team has been so good. I mean, this is the curse of being such a good hockey team. They do not have a lot of players in the system to really call upon. Looking at the goaltending here, they re-signed Tristan Jarry, and I think that was the right move. This guy, he might not have very much, if any, playoff success, but he has been consistently a pretty solid regular season goaltender. You know he's going to win his 35 games. He's going to play some pretty good hockey, probably be below a 3 goals against. I mean, average goalie, at least like in the 14-15 range in the NHL.
I still think Tristan Jarry is a pretty good goalie, and I liked how he signed, Dubas signed him for a reasonable contract, actually.
Yeah, he didn't overpay him.
And didn't overpay him and retain him in the organization for a long time. They weren't able to retain, they traded away Casey DeSmith, who I thought was actually a pretty serviceable backup goaltender for this team, so it's going to be interesting to see how they play.
This is the bigger thing. Without having DeSmith there as the backup to fall on, they signed Nedeljkovic. I don't know if he's going to end up being the backup or if they're going to find someone else, but I do think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Tristan Jarry this season to carry the load and play a lot of games, so hopefully he stays healthy.
And final team that we have in this division is the Washington Capitals, which is this guy's favorite team. I'm sorry to say, I don't think this team's going to do very well, but they added, in the offseason, they added Pacioretty. They added Edmondson. Edmondson's actually a very good add. A physical defenseman from Montreal. He is very, very good stay-at-home defenseman. He's going to help a guy like the young kid that I got from Toronto really, really well.
Oh, it's Rasmus Sandin.
Yeah, he will help Rasmus Sandin really, really well, complement him really well in my mind. And on top of that, they already have really good defense core in John Carlson. But we'll talk about that later. What do you think about your team, Washington Capitals, and how they did?
I mean, I kind of like the offseason overall. We lost Connor Sheary, which kind of was a little unfortunate. This guy was really good at slotting in the lineup, playing anywhere we needed him to. Had some key goals, consistent like 15, 20 goal scorer. But hey, when you get a guy like Patches back, if he's healthy, that's the big thing. If he's healthy, he adds a big punch to this team and this offense in general. I really, though, the Joel Edmondson, that was like the ad. This really rounds out the top 4 of our defensive core really well. I just think it's going to be really solid, and I'm really excited to see his physical presence in this lineup.
I mean, I didn't even mention Patches at all because I don't think this guy's even going to play 10 games in the season. But
Nah, he'll be fine. He'll be better by then.
No.
Let's look at this offense, though, overall. Kind of like the Penguins thing. You've got the same guys that have been here forever. You got Nicholas Backstrom, who is finally healthy. Bless. I mean, this poor guy's dealt with so much lately in injuries. TJ Oshie, Ovechkin, like the same core, and Kuznetsov. Even though there's been a lot of trade talk about Kuznetsov, he's still there, and he's still going to play likely for most of this year, at least with this team. You kind of always have a chance when you have these types of players. Unfortunately, they are getting up there in age, and it's kind of been a little unfortunate that we haven't had a young player come into this lineup and step up offensively.
Yeah, so this team is in a similar situation to the Pittsburgh Penguins, but a lot worse. They got all these old players now on this team, and they don't have any young guys coming up the system, with the exception of like Sandin. Sandin was a good acquisition by this team.
That was such a good trade, yeah.
But the thing is, I feel like this team is so up there in age right now. You guys got like TJ Oshie, who, if lucky, he'll play 30 to 40 games. And you got Nicholas Backstrom, who would be lucky if he played 30 to 40 games. I'm going to be honest here. I just don't think this team is good at all. I think this team is a bottom team in the league, and it's just my opinion.
Yeah, he's just trying to piss me off. He knows I love the Caps. But let's talk about some positives here on the offense. Dylan Strome, really impressed me last year. He filled in really well for Backstrom when he was out. He just looked really solid. At a lot of times, I thought he looked like a better center than Kuznetsov, which is pretty impressive because Kuznetsov's been a solid center in this league for a lot of years. I mean, this is obviously a guy who was drafted very high when he was younger. He's really starting to slowly live up to it. It took him a while, but I think he's a really good fit inside this top six, and I hope he still gets the opportunity, even though it's kind of had some lineup changes. Also, we really need more from Connor McMichael. Like Owen says, Washington, like Pittsburgh, doesn't have a lot of people in the system, not a lot of young offensive talent. Connor McMichael was a first-round pick, and he was expected to be really solid. I'm hoping now with the coaching change that he can come in and actually contribute a little bit, maybe even be like a 20-goal scorer.
Yeah, and now let's look at their defense here. Their defense actually looks all right. They got the February guy. Ferravari. Yeah, who's actually a pretty good defenseman. Actually. I kind of like him.
He's solid.
Obviously with John Carlson, Rasmus Sandin, now they got Joel Edmondson.
I like that. That's a good top four.
I'm not going to lie. This is a decent top four. I'm not going to lie. I have nothing to say. Actually, their defense is pretty decent.
When I look at it, I'm excited, like I said earlier, with Joel Edmondson joining, just because he adds that physical element we kind of need. John Carlson is such a good offensive defenseman, but he really doesn't have that. Rasmus Sandin's kind of interesting. We saw what he did when Carlson was out injured last year. He really showed he has offensive power to his game. I'm really excited throughout the year to see him kind of take a little bit away from John Carlson and actually kind of transition into that role as like an all-around defenseman that you can play as a top pairing guy. And then obviously like Ferravari, just really solid defensive defenseman. He's not going to get you a lot of points, but that's not what he's about. He's about being good in his own zone, being very physical along the boards. And I'm just overall pretty happy with this team in general going into the season. But finally, the goaltending. Last year went out, got Darcy Kemper. He was okay. Like, he didn't play bad. I didn't think he was terrible last year. Definitely not the reason we didn't make the playoffs. He played pretty decent for most of the year. He had a couple down moments, but overall, I'm pretty happy with this guy in net. And then one guy who really shocked me, though, has got to be the backup, Charlie Lindgren. This guy stepped up. He was at one point the player of the week for the NHL. He had like 2 shutouts. Like, it was just absolutely unreal. And I think as a tandem, I'm pretty comfortable with this tandem going forward.
Yeah, I mean, the tandem's not bad. This is not the problem. Not to me, the goaltender is not going to be the problem for the Washington Capitals. No. I actually think they're both okay goaltenders. It's the forwards for me, but yeah, the goalies are okay.
I'm hoping for one last kick at the can, make it back to the playoffs before these guys are getting to the point where they're retiring. Well, guys, we got the previews for all these teams. We got to go on now. We got to actually make predictions on how we think that this division is going to fall. And as you can see on the board here, me and Hohen have our personal projections of what we think is going to happen this year. A little surprised we got a little bit of differences here. Not all the same.
Crazy.
We got to start at the top. I mean, I have New Jersey winning this division. I think this team's just insanely talented, and I'm pretty sure they're going to finish with the most points at the end of the year.
I mean, you're probably right. I mean, they're a good team, but also at the same time, I'm not sold on the goaltender. And at the same time, I feel like they did lose a lot of players, especially on the bottom, Miles Wood. Like, those are effective players that they did lose in the lineup. Granted, why I have Carolina up in the first winning this division is because they've proven time and time again that they're just a really good team. With whatever players that they have, they always find a way to manage to make things work. And this year they added Michael Bunting, which in my opinion is an upgrade over what they had last year, what they lost. And on top of that, they also added Dmitry Orlov to that stacked defense core, which is a very good addition.
No, I mean, obviously they're a good team. I have them as second on my in-division here. That's the biggest switch we have right at the top. You have New Jersey at 2.
Yep.
So I mean, I guess it's not a big difference now.
Yep.
But I do think New Jersey pulls it out. I just feel like their team's going to consistently get better over the next 2-3 years. And like every year they're going to move up a little bit more. Looking at the third spot, basically the final team that isn't a wild card to make the playoffs in this division, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins. I thought the ads that they went out and did were really good ads. It's kind of what they needed to do. I mean, they got those new defensemen, which really changed it for this team for me. That was kind of the biggest thing. And then the experience in a guy like Riley Smith, like we talked about. I just think that Pittsburgh's going to have one last hurrah this year for Crosby and Malkin.
I mean, I have Pittsburgh at 4. As you can see, I have Rangers at 3rd. And the reason why I have Rangers higher is very simple. Is the fact that these players played together before. There's no new chemistry with these players. The other thing is that Pittsburgh, I feel like not with Crosby and Malkin and Russ and all these guys, I feel like they're not going to play the full season. The tank, there's no way these guys are going to play full season. There's going to be injuries that are going to take these guys out for long periods of time. So that's why I think it's going to hinder their performance. But I still have them in the playoffs.
See, I have almost the exact same thing flipped again with you. I have the Rangers at 4. I have them making the playoffs as a wild card this year. The reason I liked Pittsburgh more than the Rangers is I think they have more will to actually win right now. I mean, I kind of saw that Rangers team give up a little bit in the playoffs there at the end. They kind of looked dejected. I feel like they don't really get that with Crosby. He wants to win all the time. He knows he's getting up there in age. I mean, a lot of these Rangers players like Laugh, Kako, these guys are young, Hedl, they have so much time left. But Crosby knows he doesn't. I think they're going to have an unreal season. Looking down the list here, when we kind of get to the teams we don't have making the playoffs, but are kind of close, I have Washington at 5. I still think this roster is very good. I still think they're going to be over 500. I just think this division is stacked.
You see, Washington, I have almost near the bottom of this division. I have them at 7th.
What?
I just
okay,
don't
that's
feel like
big.
I just feel like this team's not good. Like it's a very not good team. Like they're defensive, but you look at who I have number 5. I have Columbus at number 5, and I think this team is just a lot better right now. I feel like this team with Johnny Hockey who can score 90 to 100 points. You got Patrick Laine who can score 30 to 40 goals. And then you guys got the young guys in Adam Fantilli, you got Kent Johnson, you got all these younger guys. But the defense core is the top 4. I really like this defense core. This revamped defense core is a lot better than what they had last year. It's going to help the goaltender out a lot. I feel like this team wants to win. They're going to try to contend for playoffs. I feel like this Columbus Blue Jackets team is going to be a very competitive team.
I think Columbus is going to be a competitive team too. I have them at 6, so one spot behind Washington. I think it's going to take a little more time for these young kids to get to that prime of their career. They're not really there. A lot of these guys are 21, 20, in Fantilli's case, like 18. I don't think it's going to click right away. I think they're going to be drastically better than last year. I wouldn't be surprised if they were 8 or 9 points higher in total points by the end of the year than they were in 2023. But going down the list here, I have the Islanders here at 7. I think that just their team's old. I'm not trying to be a hater because I actually like a lot of players on this team. No offense to Islanders fans at all. I just think this team is not quite there offensively. I know their goaltender is amazing. I know their defense is amazing. I just feel like this team's going to take a step back.
So I have Islanders at 6 ahead of the Washington Capitals, and it has to happen in this certain way, is that Matthew Barzal's got to play most of the season. If he doesn't play most of the season, then no, I see Washington beating them, but he didn't barely play last season, so I see him having a full season. And on top of that, you can't dispute that defense core. That defense core, that shutdown pairing is one of the best in the league, and Pelican Pollock is one of the best in the league. And then obviously you have Dobson should be taking another step. Scott Mayfield should be taking another step. They got a lot of players. Romanov should be taking another step. They got a really good defense core. And then obviously they got one of the best goaltenders in the league. I think this team on paper from top to bottom is still a better team than the Washington Capitals. That's why I have them at 6.
All right, and then the one thing we don't actually have any discrepancy with, which is kind of crazy that we did for the first 7, we both have Philadelphia in last. Like I said, it's a waiting game, guys. Guys like Cutter Gauthier are going to be coming up soon. Eventually, you're going to have Matvei Mishkov here. This team has so many heavy hitters in the future. Unfortunately, this year, they're full rebuilding. If they're not last in this division, I will be absolutely floored.
Yeah, they're not. They're going to stay in bottom. There's just no way.
Yeah. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this preview and our predictions here, and we look forward to you guys in the next video. Till then, take care and have a great day.
Take care. Bye.